Hello to everybody. Welcome to this video lecture. I am Fabio Merone, a research fellow at the University of Rome, and I'm also a researcher affiliated to the Laval University in Quebec. So, welcome to this video. The topic is about the Arab news media, the way they covered the Gaza conflict since October till today. We are in May, the 7th of May today. Day I'm recording this video. I'm a specialist of the MENA region politics, but I'm not specifically a specialist of media. So what I want to do with this lecture is to talk, in fact, about the Arab public opinion, to emerge through this covering of some of the news media outlets, the big tendencies in the Arab um, public opinion. And behind it, of course, I want to look out also at some geopolitics, the way these big news networks reflect also the geopolitics of the countries that are involved most of the time behind these channels, or also groups, ideological groups, as we will see. And so let's do this way. Maybe we will skip very quickly the first point about the regional geopolitics, because maybe will take us a little bit away, but we will still talk a little bit about it, that like a frame to what we will be saying after that, which is a analysis of four Arab news channels. We will see, we will take as a sample four big and important Arab news channel. Then we will go more strictly, more directly, straightforwardly to the Gaza crisis, and we will try to see how those four channels have differently covered this crisis. And finally, we will take a consideration, which is around al-Jazeera, which is, of course, is the big protagonist of the Arab news media. And we will see how Al Jazeera came back to play a role of a spoke voice, a spoke media of the Arab public opinion, especially for the way they stayed with the Palestinian resistance, which is for the Arab public opinion, as we will see, very key. Okay, so those are the Arab countries. This is our region, the MENA region, we call it. It's Middle East and North Africa region, because as you can see in the map, it covers those two geographical areas. The majority of the countries are Arab, but we also have Turkey, which is of course an important player, with Iran, and then just a little bit behind, which is the we would be called the Greater Middle East. We have Afghanistan and Pakistan. You see, just on the further east part of this geographical area. Among those big and important dates that I have signed here on the left, we may just probably mark out the 2012, when Hamas leaves the office. Hamas, the Palestinian resistance group, Islamist resistance group, that in 2012 leaves the office in Damascus because they disagree with the regime, Assad regime policy towards the opposition. This would be a key moment. Then we have also the 2017-2021 Qatar diplomatic crisis, in which Al Jazeera, the media, the channel media, the Qatari channel media, will play an important role. And then we have also the 2023 kind of normalization between Saudi Arabia and Iran. These are the two big players in the region. And here we see that in the last at least 10, 15 years, there has been kind of confrontation, but well, it goes even behind that, before that. But these 15 years we have been seeing in geopolitics of the region, which has been played around those big two players, which has also been depicted as a Sunni Shia confrontation in the region. The actors of this confrontation, especially the Shia ones, would oppose this classification of being, for example, then a Shia front against a Sunni Arabic Saudi Arabia-led front. There is some truth in that. We don't go into the details. It's not our purpose here, but we need to know also those country positioning towards the US. This is important for understanding the geopolitics of the region and also our discussion on media. So we see that on the red-orange color, we have the area dominated by Iranian influence. So Iran itself, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, part of Yemen, that part which is today controlled by the Houthi movement. And we have the US, pro-US countries, which is the Gulf countries, except Qatar and Kuwait and Oman, which this map, for example, considered directly pro-US. But the Greek countries, which the map here calls the wild card, these are countries that have security agreements with the United States. And so, in a sense, they should be put into the side of the American allies. But those are a wild card because they play sometimes an independent role, or they try to be not completely subdued to the US policy in the region. Although it's quite an argument whether they really are. It's difficult to say that Jordan or Egypt or Kuwait, they are not completely subdued to the US policies, although Oman, for example, and Qatar are more neutral towards their relation to Iran, for example. At Turkey, we know Turkey. It's in the NATO, but it's kind a player that likes to do his way, although very relatively. We should know which country position on the Palestinian issue because it matters for our discussion. Well, it's not that we talk about, we need to know every country exactly, but we may at least classify those countries in two big tendencies. The first one called the normalization front, and the second one the refusal front. This is how we can call it. And within the domestic Palestinian political spectrum, we have the big distinction between Hamas versus PLO. Hamas should be put into the refusal front, and PLO into the normalization front, although with some distinction compared to the other countries of this normalization front. The normalization front are those countries, the ones that we mentioned as being the closest to the US, which participate to the American policy in the region of getting a belt of security around Israel. So they are pushed to get a diplomatic normalization with Israel. Israel has not been recognized by the Arab countries until 1979, when Egypt here was the first country to get normalization relation with Israel following the peace agreements, the Camp David agreements. Then followed Jordan in '93 with the Oslo process, And then very recently, there's been this push by the American administration, which started with Trump, to make Arab countries to have diplomatic relations with Palestine, the so-called Abraham Accord, which were signed in 2021-22, and if I'm not wrong, by the Emirates, the Arab Emirates. Here it is, and then followed by Bahrain and Morocco and Sudan. But the big step for the American and Israeli normalization process is the agreement with Saudi Arabia, which was very close to be done before 7 October. This is important because those refusal countries, they would argue that this normalization process is made only for the sake of Israeli security and not for the Palestinian independence cause, because in exchange of this normalization process, there is nothing in favor of an acknowledgement of by the Israeli and the Americans of the right of Palestinians to have a state. So to the acknowledgement of a Palestinian state. And the other countries which follow the Iranian line, they refuse indeed this diplomatic push by the Americans, because they see only the end of the Palestinian cause in favor of an ultimate normalization process with Israel, which would be the only one to benefit. This is why the PLO did not follow the Abraham Accord, whilst Hamas and Jihad Islamic, the second other important political party involved also in the October 23 conflict, they are into the refusal front, not only because they refused this normalization process, but also because they refused the Oslo process, which was in the 90s, based on the idea of acknowledging the state of Israel and refusing the armed resistance. The PLO has done it since 93, but Hamas and the parties that follow this idea, they oppose the fact that they have only recognized Israel without getting in exchange any Palestinian state. So let's see then our sample of channels. There are four. These are al-jazeera, al-arabiyya, and skynews Arabic, and al-mayadeen. Let's see the first one, and the most famous one, the most important to these days one. It's Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera was launched in '96 out of a split of journalists from BBC Arabic. BBC Arabic was an English-sponsored project, but with Saudi Arabia donors. So at that time, in '96, the split came out of a complaint by the journalist for censorship. The Amir of Qatar at the time, Amir Ahmadi Athani, was coming on the scene as an emir that wanted to liberalize the country, introduce new liberal policies, and he came with this idea of making a new channel, which was very successful because it gave an uncensored space of debates, which was unusual at that time for the Arab media. But the idea was also to have an Arab voice. The line of Al Jazeera since the beginning was to counter the Western American narrative on the crisis, the political crisis in the region. And it was so following the CNN model of covering the Iraqi war, but in a different way, in a different style, not only because it represented the Arab point of view, but also because it was an independent and not embedded war journalism. It was very successful. It gave a space for a debate, for debating the sensitive issues in the domestic politics of the Arab countries. There was only one taboo in Al Jazeera that was to be respected, which was the domestic Qatari politics and some sensitive issues in Gulf countries' politics, which would damage eventually Qatar. So, besides those limits, Al Jazeera was a free space. It became very, very popular in these years. He covered the Afghan war in 2001, famous in the Iraqi war in 2003. They were bombed by the Americans. Journalists were killed by the American bombings, both in Kabul and in Baghdad. They paid the price in the 2000s. They were accused to being close to the jihad insurgents in Iraq and close to even Al Qaeda. That time, indeed, Al Jazeera was broadcasting the Osama bin Laden audio recording of his messages. So, but after 2011, the so-called Arab Spring, Al Jazeera became the West became more sympathetic to Al Jazeera because Al Jazeera took, with no hesitation, the side of the opposition movement to the regime. And finally, this cost also some price to Al Jazeera because by 2012, in the Arab public opinion, there was a big split between those where the split was with the Syrian war. It began indeed with the Bahrain uprising, which was not enough covered by Al Jazeera, by the Western media. By the way, it is a very bleak page of the Arab Spring because everybody excited about Egypt, Tunisia, and Yemen and Syria, but nobody really paid attention to the Bahrain uprising. Why? Because Saudi Arabia did not like it. They invaded Bahrain to silence the opposition movements, the civic movements in Bahrain. Why? Because those were made by the majority Shia population. So for Saudi Arabia was the beginning of this Cold War, silent war with Iran. And for this reason, there was also a split in Al Jazeera, within Al Jazeera. But this group of journalists that came out of Al Jazeera in 2012 argued that there was also an editorial change in Al Jazeera, especially since this Sheikh Ahmad ibn Thamer Al Thani from the Al Thani family, the royal family, the governing family in Qatar, was appointed as Al Jazeera Network's chairman. So this is how a new channel came on the scene. There was al-mayadeen. Al-mayadeen was indeed launched in 2012 by the journalist Ghassan Ben-Jeddo. Ghassan Ben-Jeddo was the leader of the group of journalists that came out by this juncture from Al Jazeera, and it was the Al Jazeera head office in Tehran and in Beirut, in Lebanon. So this channel was officially founded by a wealthy businessman, although much is speculated about Syria and Iran and even Hezbollah being behind it. Anyway, officially they claim to be founded by wealthy businessmen. Al-Mayadeen became so the voice of the so-called axis of the resistance, which are those countries that we showed at the beginning as being aligned with the front of the refusal, which corresponded also to the Iranian front in the region, but it became an anti-imperialist front, and Al-Mayadeen so itself as its voice, its media. But Al-Mayadeen went also behind it and started to develop a project that was addressing to the global South causes, especially those anti-imperialist causes, like famously the Bolivarist project of a Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. They got close to Cuba or even to Russia and China, and they proposed projects that linked all those channels together with Russia Today or also with the Chinese TV network. Especially with Venezuela, however, they developed a Spanish language version of the channel. It was, I think, in 2015 to honor the 2 years death of former Venezuelan leader Chavez. And the third channel is al-arabiyya. Al-arabiyya was also a response to al-jazeera. In a different way, it was the second big channel of our sample. So it came before al-mayadeen in 2003 already, that was launched by Riyadh, by Saudi Arabia, to counter Al Jazeera, which was becoming very popular and which was quite troubling for the Saudi regime, because Al Jazeera, as we said, was countering the narrative of the big spots in the region, the big authoritarian regime's discourse. And they called it that the goal was to provide a balanced and less provocative information. So they accused Al Jazeera to be biasing their news, and so they would oppose with this project a more correct, so to say, from their point of view, version of the facts. He covered the the civil or the insurgency in Saudi Arabia and in Iraq, sorry, and they covered a lot Iraq and Lebanon, and they were accused to inflame, in fact, the sectarian fire in the region by sponsoring Sunni groups and being anti-Shia. This was the perception, at least in Iraq, also in Lebanon, two countries which are still separated by this sectarian cross-line Sunni Shia, where the Iranian influence get grower and grower. Al-Arabiyya also famously hosted the 2009 President Barack Obama discourse to the Muslims. He supported the Syrian opposition against the Assad regime, which is a peer of the axis of the resistance pro-Iranian alliance, which was seen by Riyadh, as we may imagine, as the major issue. So the fourth channel is skynews Arabia, which is more recent. It was launched in 2017. No, sorry, I don't have the date here, and so I think that it should be in 2012 as well. I think, yeah, in 2012 as well. I don't know why I don't have signed the date here. I forgot, but anyway, was just after the beginning of the Arab Spring, was 2012, I think, and it was this UK Emirati project. It is based in Abu Dhabi, in the Emirates, and is controlled directly by the state, by Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Vice President of the UAE, and also the brother of the President of the Emirates. It was very much an instrument of the Emirate state against Al Jazeera and against Qatar. This is the time when the big struggle between in the time in which the Emirates becomes a big player in the region. Actually, after 2015, becomes to be the head of a coalition against the Arab Spring movements, against the Muslim Brotherhood that in the time took power in many countries in the region, took advantage of the democratization because they were elected as ruling parties in the region. So they started a crusade really against the Muslim Brotherhoods. They brought with them the Emirati prince at the time, brought with him Mohammed, Saudi Arabia, bin Salman, and then they supported the Sisi regime in Egypt after the coup in 2003, and until they led this war against Qatar and against Al Jazeera, which were accused to be linked with Al Qaeda to support terrorism, to support the Muslim Brotherhood, which they outlawed, considering them as terrorists, I mean, it's a terrorist organization. They also covered the Khashoggi case in 2018. You remember the journalist that was killed in the Saudi embassy in Istanbul. They broadcasted it a pro-Saudi coverage. Those are some images that give us the some idea of the channels. This picture in the left is Al Jazeera headquarters in Qatar. And on the right, it's the very famous Al Jazeera logo. Al Jazeera, this geometrical image that you see, it's the name Al Jazeera in Arabic, made in a very aesthetic shape. And this logo is famously going down into the ocean, opening up the water, emerging into the water, and then coming out with this very nice music. It's this very famous Al Jazeera um, presentation trial. And yeah, Al Jazeera is the other outlets besides al-mayadeen. Maybe they were presented as a very modern way to present the Arab world, which was also against the backdrop. You see that there is behind much, besides Al Jazeera, there is much of the Gulf countries' money behind it. And this is also the project that since the 90s, those countries tried to to project a new image of themselves, of the Arabs, as modern, but modern in a different way. What does it mean? For Al Jazeera, there was really a professional journalism. Al Jazeera, to this day, nobody can doubt about Al Jazeera high level professionalism in journalism. Whatever you may consider about their opinion, their tendencies, but nobody doubt about the 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 way they cover the news. I mean, they have correspondents and reporters everywhere. They broadcast really from the place of the events. They paid also a big price often, and this is one strong symbol. Recent symbol. There have been others. Wahel al-Dahdud, the historical Al Jazeera Gaza report, which was symbol of this war in Gaza from the point of view of the Palestinians. Many journalists, I think to this day, 240 journalists have been killed in the Gaza operation since October. And Wahel Dahdud was the big symbol. They killed his wife, his daughters, first time, and then they fired on him a second time. He was wounded, but his fellow journalist died. And then a third time, they struck on his other son. I think the last one that still was alive, also a journalist himself, a young journalist. And Al Dahdud was really a big victim, a big sacrifice victim of the Al Jazeera journalism or journalism in Gaza in general. And this is al-mayadeen headquarters. You see the image is quite different. You do not have this image of big investments, big money, modernity in the sense of also projecting technological and modern utilities. This is the al-mayadeen, more modest um, headquarter of al-mayadeen in this is in Beirut, but this is also on one way we can look at the other side, the different projection of the image of al-mayadeen, which is based more on militancy than on anything else. This is the image that al-mayadeen wants to project to itself. This is Hassan Benjeddu, the leader, we can say, the political leader almost, because it's a very ideological channel. We said it's a resistance channel, and Ghassan Benjeddu was the one that founded, as we mentioned, al-mayadeen. We see here the al-mayadeen logo, al-waqa kama huwa. It's written here in Arabic, which means the reality as it is. This is, as we said, for al-arabiyya. Al-mayadeen also came out of what they accused al-jazeera to be as biased information. So they pretend to talk by themselves, by themselves, the reality as it is, not just like it is manipulated by Al Jazeera. This is the underlined the comment, and of course each one sees the reality according to his own political orientation or ideological orientation. We see also here the date of the foundation of al-mayadeen, 11 June 2012. Al-mayadeen is, of course, closely linked to Hezbollah, the Shia resistance movement in Lebanon. And this is Nasrallah. This is Nasrallah. They covered a lot of Nasrallah speeches. And so there is a clear link between the two sides. And this is al-arabiyya. Also, you see, al-arabiyya, we are back in Saudi Arabia, modern studios, technologies, an image of modernity, which is also projected in the style of the journalist, which is more clearly seen in the skynews journalist, woman journalist in general. In particular, here we have this picture which calls it Jamilet Media. Jamilet means beautiful. So they project this image of modernity as being related to the modern woman. If you may notice here, this look is a look of, which is very similar to the look of the Arab star system, music star system, star systems, and this is a kind of beauty which comes especially from Lebanon. We said that Lebanon is very important for both the al-mayadeen as the projection of a resistance image, on the other from Saudi Arabia and let's say from Emirates even more, this Lebanon, which is more Christian or Cairo Sunni Lebanon, which projects a more pro-Western image of modernity, which is reflected also in the style of this journalist. Not that Al Jazeera or al-mayadeen do not want the woman to be modern, but they have a different conception of modernity. The Al Jazeera journalists, for example, are more they are more modern in the sense that they are intellectual and they are attached to a modernity which is also mixed with authenticity, which does not deny the fact that they are Arabs and Muslims. Whilst for al-mayadeen, modernity is in the sense of being militant. It's more in the classical sense of Arab nationalism, militancy. So you see those journalists, those women journalists, very engaged. This is the projection that you get, the projected image that you get when you watch those channels. And those are two famous Sky News journalists, Michelle Haddad, very famous, Yara Ibrahim as well. So this kind of beauty, very modern, very sexy, very Western kind of style. And finally, we get to the point in which we should compare. We should see how the Gaza crisis is being narrated. So from the different outlets. So how do we do it? We try to take three topics and compare each one broadcasting of it. The three topics are Iran, and the axis of the resistance, and the resistance in the resistance groups, the way they broadcast it in Palestine. So let's see first of all the first point about Iran. Okay, Sky News and al-arabiyya, um, they broadcast the Gaza crisis as being played out by Iran. They do not see, they tend not to depict the 7 October as a Palestinian resistance strategy or operation, but as a Iranian-led operation. But this is always in all the political issues in the region, they tend to see always Iran behind. Because as we said, um, there has been this cleavage in the politics of the region between pro-Iran and pro-Emirates and Saudi Arabia, Sunni states called Sunni states. But for Al Jazeera, what is Al Jazeera position about Iran? Al Jazeera tend historically tend to be neutral towards Iran. In fact, Al Jazeera is very good news channel to understand Iran because it's really neutral. This reflects really the Al-Qatar geopolitics over there, but they were kind of um, opposed to the Iranian operation in Syria in support of the Assad regime. So, but the Gaza crisis came to change a little bit this, and they looked at Iran as a country which potentially can be a friend of the Palestinian cause. So they've been waiting the move of Iran, but then they saw that Iran is not ready to come into to help of Hamas or to the Palestinians as they did with Syria. This is what Al Jazeera have been underlining all the long of the crisis. They say, okay, they are allies, they help, but not to the point to come into help. It's not Hamas, so the Palestinians are not part of the axis of the resistance, although they are friends. This is how Al Jazeera see it. For al-mayadeen, instead, Iran is the leader of the resistance, the anti-imperial resistance against the American and in favor of the Palestinian issue, which is the main issue as they see it of the region for the Arab. They spoke of Iran positively, putting it in contrast with the Arab countries in action and pro-Western subjugation. So this is the different way that those channels look at the issue of Iran. And related to it, how they covered, how they broadcasted this issue of the axis of the resistance. For the axis of the resistance, so just like make it a little bit clearer, those are Hezbollah, those are the Houthi, and those are the Iraqi militias, and this is the support that they receive from Iran. So this is what we mean by axis of resistance, to be straightforward. And but Sky News al-Arabiyya, they are quite close to that. For them, those groups, they are nothing but Iranian proxies. This is very close to the Israeli Western point of view on the issues. So they call them militias, they call them jama'at in a negative sense, and they see them as only an instrument for Iran in the hands of the Iranian to destabilize the Arab countries. So in covering the Gaza crisis, they have not emphasized Iran help, but Iran negative role, and instead emphasized Arab countries humanitarian aid. So those countries that the resistance camp see as being inactive, Sky News and Arabia will emphasize that they are helping in delivering human aid to the civil population, so not to the military groups. Al-Mayadeen instead is the channel, spoke voice, as we said, of this anti-imperialist resistant front, as they see it, the axis of the resistance, and they emphasize the strategy of the unity of the fronts, which means that each of those fronts that we mentioned, in Yemen, in Lebanon, and Iraq, act in solidarity with Palestinian resistance, with Hamas and Jihad, and so they broadcast each action of those groups by making deep and military and strategic analysis each time there is an action, especially from the Houthi and from Hezbollah, and they broadcast daily their actions, which they see is in the frame of a unity of the front strategy in help of Gaza. As we said, also Al Jazeera broadcast a lot as well of those actions, but in a less emphatic way compared to Al-Mayadeen. They support them. They broadcast their action as long as they are seen as actions that support the Palestinian cause, that support Hamas in Gaza, but they are not exactly the voice of these groups as for Al Mayadeen. Mayadeen, for example, will broadcast each of the Houthi spokesperson speeches in a full way, as well as the Nasrallah Hezbollah leader speeches. Al Jazeera only if this matters for some specific reasons. As also Al Jazeera does not emphasize all actions. Some action, for example, from the Iraqi groups, they are not very effective, so Al Jazeera will not broadcast it, whilst Al Mayadeen will always broadcast it and emphasize taking the information from these groups' statements, not even going to verify really the entity of those actions, which sometimes are very much making declared to be bigger than they really are by those groups. And finally, we have the Palestinian resistance groups. How do those channels depict them? So, just to make clear, to make explicit, for Al Jazeera is in a sense, to make it in a simple way, has been and it has been during these months as the spoke channel of Hamas. There is a direct communication between Al Jazeera and the Kataib al-Qassam, the armed brigades, the armed wing of Hamas, and they really emphasize a lot the Hamas actions, which they depict as an heroic resistance. So the 7th October is a turning point that's been depicted. And Al-Mayadeen is very similar in that they came closer together, Al-Mayadeen and Al Jazeera. This is important to underline. Al-Mayadeen historically has been closer to Islamic Jihad group, but since those groups after 7 October they came very close, they are actually operating on the ground of the armed resistance together. So also Al-Mayadeen and Al Jazeera, they seems to have become very close, at least into the matter of the Palestinian resistance. So in that, they broadcasted in a very similar way, and they consider this an heroic resistance of the Palestinian people in union with the resistance group. Sky News Arabic and al-arabiyya, they are not at all pro the Palestinian groups, with some distinction. For example, al-arabiyya emphasize a lot the Palestinian national unity, so they tend to take the side of the Palestinian Authority. So they are still critical to Israeli, and they may also invite some of Hamas to speak into their studios, but skynews really emphasize a lot against Hamas. They do not see anything about resistance in this action. They see Iran, as we said, behind it is manipulating. Hamas is the cause of the trouble of the people of the Gaza. And the issue after 7 October is not the Palestinian resistance. There is not such a thing as a Palestinian resistance led by the resistance group like Hamas. There is just irresponsible people that they think for their own interest, and they instrumentalize the people of Gaza, which are paying the big prices, humanitarian prices in this crisis. It is again a very close view as that of the West or as that of Israel. And there is some distinguish. We said Sky News is really very much against the Palestinian groups, against al-arabiyya as well, but it's a little bit more biased, a little bit less straightforward, especially since Saudi Arabia has made this stand that they will not talk, there is not issue of talking about the normalization with Israel as long as there is an onslaught going on in Gaza. So Saudi Arabia has been a little bit playing the role of standing against the pressure of the Americans, although it's not exactly that, but they have been emphasizing. So the Arabia line, editorial line, reflect a lot of this politics. Saudi Arabia has been sponsoring since 2002 a peace agreement with Israel in which they proposed the normalization with Israel, but in exchange of a Palestinian state. So the Palestinian state should also come out as the result of the unity between Hamas and the OLP, the unity, a national unity, Palestinian representation. So Al-Arabiyya emphasized a lot that, more than Sky News Arabic. And in conclusion about al-Jazeera, why did I mention about al-Jazeera being the voice of the resistance and the Arab people again? Al-Jazeera, during the process of the 2011, 2017, 18, let's say it, democratization process, which was then became a return to authoritarian. They became less popular, we may say, because there was a split within the Arabs, the Arab public opinion, the Arab public sphere, and since 2013, the Egyptian al-Sisi coup, etc., there was an opposition come to the Muslim Brotherhood and to Al Jazeera, which was seen as the spoke voice of the Muslim Brotherhood. So Al Jazeera popularity somehow was diminished. But, and then the split of 2012, we mentioned with al-mayadeen, but with this crisis, the October crisis, Al Jazeera came on the scene again as the voice representing the Arab people, as it used to be before 2011. And this image that we see it's very symbolic of what I'm saying. This is Abu Obaida, the spokesperson of Kataib al-Qassam, the Hamas armed wing, which was giving speeches, which has been giving speeches regularly and was broadcasted in exclusive by Al Jazeera. And these Abu Biden speech were very popular among the Arab people. So Al Jazeera, through this direct link with the Palestinian resistance, became very popular. And then we have here another image that shows what I'm saying. It is about the General Fayez Douiri, another very popular Al Jazeera voice or face that emerged in these months. This is a general strategic analyst that came on the studio regularly every day for months. He's a Jordanian retired general, but he's very passionate. He's very pro-resistance. And his analysis became very famous throughout the Arab world, and especially when there was this, because he was able to create this link with the mujahideen, or the fighters on the ground, and to the point that this guy famously, after making an operation, you say that that Al-Qassem was broadcasting, was recording by video, sometimes their operation, their action, which were broadcasted from al-jazeera, and then would be analyzed by the general Douiri. And this guy that you see in the picture on the right, famously during one action, he commented in the video after he made his action, "Hallelujah Douiri." So now analyze this, General Douiri. So calling to while doing this action on the ground, they called the Al Jazeera studio. They spoke directly to Al Douiri to make clear that there was an incredible, sentimental or emotional connection between this general at the studio Al Jazeera and those fighters. There was a very special moment during this broadcasting of the 7 October of the 7 October operations. Let me now. Here I am. You see now me, and I have finished my presentation. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, put like. This is a presentation that I was preparing for the next week that I will be giving to the Laval University in Canada. So if you enjoyed, put like and subscribe if you want, and I'll see you to the next video. Thanks for having followed anyway.